All right. Thank you everybody for coming. This is just an amazing venue. Caleb, Amy, shout out to the team that set this up, and just a great group of people. Seeing some old friends and meeting some new ones. Great to be in Nashville. Get to wear our boots when we're in Nashville, right? Talk about crypto, talk about payments, and this is a really great day. So payments can mean a lot of things. Specifically, what we're talking about today is B2B payments, right? So we're talking about corporate payables. So point of sale. Swiping, peer-to-peer payments like Venmo, those are all great topics for crypto too. But today we're specifically talking about businesses paying their vendors. So really can't think of two better organizations or three better people to talk about this topic than Google and Coinbase. So we're going to start with some introductions. I'll jump into a little bit of the status quo of what's going on with fiat payments in B2B today. We'll talk about the why and what's important and why this is important to you all here. Roselle's going to talk to us how this actually happens at Coinbase, how you can do this in a big organization and on the flip side, and then get into a little bit of the vendor set and the future state. So yeah, really looking forward to this. For a quick intro, and then I'll go to you, Rich. Jim Thompson, lead sales and partnerships, been at Bitwave for about 3 years. Prior to that, spent about 8 years at FIS. Spent a lot of that time working on B2B payments with Fortune 500 companies and large financial institutions. So pretty good handle on the status quo and a lot of processes that need updating. Rich, I'll flip to you.
Hi, everyone. Rich, Global Head of Strategy for Crypto at Google. I've been at Google now for about 5 years. Before I took on this role, I was actually a regulatory enforcement lawyer for a firm in New York. So I spent a lot of time thinking about all of the things that we are dealing with in the crypto space for a long time before I moved on to the product side.
Hi, I'm Cindy, VP of Source-to-Pay, Vendor Management, and Real Estate. Everything we spend at Coinbase. I've been here for 6.5 years. Really was employee number 1 in my function, building it from ground zero, and now crypto payments has been sort of my baby.
Hi, everyone. I'm Roselle Lagunzad. I'm the Director of P2P Operations. Been at Coinbase for about almost 6 years and helped Cindy build from systems, infrastructure, and and I also pay all our vendors, so yeah.
Amazing, thank you guys. So we have really good perspectives here. Like I said, I'm gonna start with a little bit on the status quo. So B2B payments today, these stats are all from the most recent AFP survey. Number 1 payment method for B2B payments is ACH payments. Probably could have guessed that. That includes both debits and credits. That's just under about 50% of the payment volume. I'm not here to tell the audience ACH payments are terrible. They're okay. Right? The fees aren't incredibly onerous depending on your relationship with your bank or intermediaries. The speed is not great. We're still taking a couple days to settle. You're certainly not getting any activity on the weekends or on holidays or anything like that, so lots of process improvement. Number 2 payment method. Can anybody in the audience guess what it'll be? I heard credit card, wire, it's paper check. About 30% of B2B payments in the US and Canada are still on the good old-fashioned paper check. So we have a lot of improvement there. I don't need to educate this audience on why checks are not great from a cost standpoint, speed standpoint, not to mention fraud, risk issues, reconciliation nightmares. So we have a lot of checks that we can get onto stablecoins or something much better. Third is wires. Whoever said that, it's about 15% of payment volume. That includes both domestic and international. So domestic wires, you've probably sent them in your personal life, maybe for a mortgage payment or something like that. Doesn't work at scale. High unit costs. It does go quickly if you can send it, but I was with somebody yesterday that needed to send a wire and they didn't get to the cutoff time. So guess what? That money's not getting there until the next day. And then the last is credit cards. Whoever said that, it's about 7% of payment volume. Some of those are designed for accounts payable, single-use virtual cards. It can be manual. It can be a little bit more automated if it's straight through processing. But at the end of the day, credit cards are not going to be a good for this B2B use case in a lot of situations. You have those interchange fees. Doesn't hit the payer, but it hits the vendor, right? So if you're talking about thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in vendor payments, which happens for companies at this scale, they don't want to pay 2 to 3% in interchange. So that's what we're working with today. And in tech, at Bitwave, at other startups, we think about a 10x improvement, right? In order to disrupt the status quo, you need a 10x improvement. The good news is crypto payments are definitely 10x faster and definitely 10x cheaper. So we've got a great opportunity here. Cindy, I want to start with you on the why. You said this has been your baby, which I hadn't heard that before. I like that word. Tell us why this became your baby, why this has been important to you at Coinbase.
Well, actually, we've been paying with crypto since I've been here, for as long as I've been here. So in 2018, handful of vendors, mostly Web3. However, over the last couple years, my CFO and I, we need utilization. Now that it's proven to be its own asset class, I mean, ETFs, just yesterday, right, ETH like everything's happening. So utilization is sort of the next step with this industry, and why not try to go to our vendor partners and start there? So that was extremely important. Adoption, I think there's definitely vendor demand now. A lot of people, clients, partners, they're all at least curious about getting to sort of payments, benefits of just faster, cheaper, like all the things you just mentioned. It really is the difference between seconds versus days, and even not having to rely on sort of banking hours. And then obviously to, drive our own products, like we have an amazing, Prime product and driving USDC adoption, and so selfishly wanting to grow our own ecosystem.
Yeah, that's great. And shout out Ryan, who's in the audience. If you need Coinbase help, Ryan can help you out. And so someone that's using your own product, you said since 2018, which is a long time, but then you've seen increased vendor adoption is great. So we're going to unpack that a little bit more. Rich, from your side at Google, you think about a lot of different things. You wear a lot of hats. Why has payments become an important strategic initiative for you?
Yeah, so I think, from my perspective, our team's perspective, a big focus for us is maintaining the longevity of the, kind of the Web3 innovation cycle, right? And so a lot of that is obviously coming at it with products and services to help support businesses like Coinbase. But when it comes to really adopting it, it's just, frankly, just feels a little odd to say, hey, I'm going to help you build sort of the future of finance with cloud compute, but I don't touch that crypto stuff, right? Like that just is not, it's a non-starter. And there are hyperscalers who take that position, right? We've been custodying cryptocurrency now for about 2.5 years, thanks to our work with Coinbase. And so our end, sort of focus was, can we have a fully, digital Web3 experience for our customers where we are selling them compute and data that powers their Web3 ecosystem, whether they be protocols or exchanges or what have you. And then when they have to pay for that service, they're able to pay for it in the native cryptocurrency that they may be building from scratch. And that full life cycle, for our business was really important because it creates longevity and resilience so that regardless of what the price of Bitcoin might be or Ethereum might be, you start to create kind of these, deeply rooted financial processes and back-end systems that outlast any particular asset class, any particular stablecoin, but actually, maintain the fact that we're going to be using digital payments that are instant, settle instantly, and are tokenized. So I think there's our team's perspective was that, more broadly speaking, you think about kind of Google and the size of Google and the complexity of our back office finance systems, which is kind of what I got a front row seat to when I was an attorney there. Massive amounts of volume for payments. And so when you think about where this disruption has the greatest opportunity to yield that ROI, it's going to be kind of at both ends of the spectrum, but it's going to start with a company like Google, right, where you start talking about trillions of dollars of volume of payments, everything from $1 for a YouTube creator all the way up to millions of dollars for cloud spend. And so as a company that's rooted in that innovative cycle and sort of the idea that we should be pushing the envelope, it's sort of a no-brainer for us to take this on. And certainly when you have partners like Coinbase and others, it just makes, you can mutualize that risk and that cost, so you're not going it alone.
Yeah, and Rich, one thing that stands is the sheer scale at a place like Google, right? I mean, we're excited about, what was it, I think 186 billion of stablecoin volume, which is a big number, but then we're literally talking about multiples of that for Google's own payables, right? So this is huge volume that's out there.
And it's also the reach of the business too. When you think about how much business we do internationally, that international payments kind of pain point is very real for us. And compound that with the FX risk that we're constantly looking at, right? I know our treasury team is looking at dealing in certain currencies. It only makes sense to start exploring options. And the US dollar denominated stablecoin is a fantastic tool for international payments, period.
Yeah. And Roselle, before we go to you, Rich, I just want to dig into that one more. In terms of what's resonated with your finance team, like you talked about speed and cost, you just mentioned this FX risk. When I was at my last job, it was cross-border payments that stood out to me like a sore thumb of like, this is inevitable that it needs to get on a stable coin, but it's not trivial, and we'll dig into that. Is that what's resonated mostly with your finance team that's maybe not as exposed to crypto?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly that. There's sort of this heuristic that we have when we think about these things, where because the scale is so large, if somebody says, oh, well, that, you're only improving it by 1%. Well, 1% of $1 trillion is a lot of money saved. And so if I can tell my treasury team, hey, because we're adopting crypto payments for these particular customers, we can negotiate beneficial payment terms. So instead of doing net 40, we can get them to net 15. Well, then all of a sudden, if that customer is paying you $100 million a year, those 25 days of where that money sits in your treasury team's control is a massive boon for the business. And if you look at our quarterly results, like our treasury team is fantastic. They drive like 2 to 3% of our revenue regularly, just by moving money around, which is I always thought was kind of wild. So when you say, I'm going to give you a little bit of adrenaline by leveraging this new technology, so you could take that 2%, make it 3% or 3.5%, and you're talking about $1 trillion worth of volume and payments, it's a huge win for them. So they're on board.
When we're talking about B2B payments and volume, I mean, it's not just speed for fun, right? The treasury team cares about speed for their working capital, their DPO, their DSO analysis, and those turn into real dollars. And we can even go look at the Google 10K and do some calcs on that, right? So Roselle, you've been essential at Coinbase since 2018 and more recently, since we've been working together at really putting the processes in place. What has that been like for you?
Well, it's been quite a journey. Actually, there was 2 journeys, one from a system perspective, and the second one would be from an operational. During the early days of, paying our first WeWork payment, it was very manual. We had to create a ticket for our treasury team to send the crypto payment, and then we had to come back and go ahead and reconcile that. So in order for us, to scale, Alicia and Cindy said, we need the tools and technology, to be able to bring this to life. And so what we did was partner with a forward-thinking vendor, Bitwave, to help us get there. So what we did was we had to reimagine the whole vendor onboarding experience and payment process. And to do that, we had to actually reconfigure our whole onboarding experience. One, collecting the wallet. And actually, wallet was a lot easier than fiat or any of the international, because believe it or not, a lot of our banking is always, not. There's a handful of them that always fail. So, wallets are a lot easier to collect. Secondly, we needed a tool. We partnered with Bitwave to build us a way to make those payments and reconcile them automatically. So with that helped us greatly reduce our manual, working with treasury, AP, so now it's more seamless. The second piece to that was also operationalizing it. So once, we had the strategic sourcing team, which is part of the source-to-pay team, they're on the front lines working with the vendors, and so they're building that pipeline with our vendors to see if they are, want to get paid in crypto. So we work with our institutional sales team once we give them the introduction and start onboarding them. So once they get their wallet, all AP has to do is switch their payment method and boom, make their payment.
Yeah, really helpful. And I think what's maybe obvious to some folks and not obvious to others, unless you've been in this kind of scale, is like this is the Enterprise Digital Asset Summit. There are a lot of processes that you need to think about at Coinbase. And if I just want to send a payment to a friend, I don't need to think about that. I can just set up my MetaMask and move a payment, or my Coinbase wallet, or Phantom wallet, anything else. You've got different departments. It sounds like sourcing, which I know rolls up to you, Cindy.
We're a publicly traded company, so
Yep.
IPO readiness, we have been through it all. We have to adhere to all the things that were talked about in the prior session.
Loved what Gary talked about this morning, so that's applicable, right? So you've got sourcing, AP, treasury, operations, you've got technical teams, all those folks coming into play. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment about that, because just your point about sort of operational readiness and having to go through kind of the IPO cycle. From our perspective, I think one of the biggest challenges when we talked to people in 2021 when we were looking at payments seriously, there were a lot of people who were sort of trumping the crypto payments thing right there. Oh, you should do this, and we create this little widget that you should buy from us, and obviously everyone wants to win Google's business. But it was absolutely fascinating to me, 2 things. One, everyone was focused on consumer. Everyone. Which is absolutely, it's very difficult to do consumer-based payments. And every time somebody would start with that, and we were contrarian in thinking that B2B would be the way to go, because everyone was like, well, why would you focus on that? But I would always ask, okay, well, how do you refund that consumer? They want to return the item. Oh, well, we don't know how to, we'll figure it out. So that was the first issue. The other thing was, it was wild how few folks who were building the technology had their own battle scars by building out their own back office finance in a way that mirrors or looks like a lot of the companies that are probably here today. In other words, has the systemization and the processes, the checks and balances, the product counsel, the treasurer, the risk manager, all of those people who are stakeholders and need to be won over. So it's not just enough to go in and say like, well, we've got this new slick payment method and it's going to save you X percent. It's also, by the way, we're not driving a bus off the cliff. And the way that you convinced at least our treasury team and our finance team is by basically saying, not only do these people have the technical savvy to do this, in other words, they're capable, but they've also done it themselves in a business that looks and feels a lot like ours. I think that was totally missed in the first wave of crypto payments back in 2018-19.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason we have been trying to build this internally and really starting with our own vendors. Like, we are trying to continue to evolve. Like, we're not saying it's the easiest, but it's gotten a lot easier, and we're continuing to evolve the process so that we can continue to sell and have more vendors and future customers and like partners and everybody start driving the process.
Yeah, and if all it took was better tech, we wouldn't have all these check payments, right, that we just heard about. Yeah, I was joking with somebody the other day, you got to go back to your science class for Newtonian physics when you're thinking about these big corporations. Like, an object at rest will stay at rest, right? So you guys, like 200,000 employees at Google, trying to figure out how to move this forward, evangelizing is really helpful. We also have like a cold start problem because the network effects are incredible on these B2B payments on chain once we get it going. But we need to build that network first. So you kind of are spearheading that and getting that going. Cindy, do you mind speaking to some of the vendors that are actually participating in this today?
Yes, sure. Well, like Roselle said, we actually, our largest first vendor that paid was actually WeWork. They were actually our lease and our landlord, and that was 2 years ago. And so they actually jumped on this bandwagon pretty quickly. It was manual at the time, but that was sort of where we're like, hey, if WeWork's gonna want to do this, we should start driving more adoption. So we did start this effort and probably implementing, getting this automated a year ago with Bitwave. And back to Roselle's point, we can't possibly scale this process if we didn't have some of these automations. But year to date, since we've kicked off, like, we have 63 vendors, traditional vendors, like, onboarded, Google included, obviously. EY has been a huge partner, and again, they have also just been great in sort of driving this sort of ecosystem and partner. And then legal firms have been a big, Paul Graywall sort of put it out there in his LinkedIn, like, come, and everybody jumped on the bandwagon. Marketing agencies, yeah, so a breadth of different partners, and we definitely work very closely with sort of our institutional team to drive other partners on board.
First of all, really incredible to be able to execute a stablecoin payment to somebody like Google at that scale. Just amazing. And a lot of these vendors that you're starting to pick up, they're new to crypto, right? You're having to do some education and you're getting them familiar with it. So really, you're doing some work that a lot of people in the audience are appreciate, because I know a couple clients here that are thinking about B2B payments, haven't gotten too far with it yet, and they can take advantage of these vendors that you're educating, which is great. Yeah, amazing. Rich, from your side, let's talk a little bit more future state. Like, what are you excited about? What do you think are some of the hurdles that we still need to get over for this use case to really take off and get more adoption?
So I think there's going to be an explosion in U.S. dollar-denominated stablecoins, and I think we're going to see, different legal and sort of corporate machinations of how to structure that product, right? So USDC structured differently than something like PayPal USD, and I think we'll still see more creative mechanisms for essentially holding a cash reserve, creating a tokenized abstraction of that reserve, and then allowing folks to transact. And so I expect that we'll see a pretty big explosion there, and it's actually one of the big selling points for why now is such an important time, because the processes that we're setting up are generally token agnostic. And I think a lot of folks who are newer to crypto kind of miss that, right? They think, oh, I'm doing this to accept USDC. They don't realize that it's really the same way to accept PYUSD or some other future dollar-based crypto. So I think that's going to happen. I think we're going to start seeing, a lot of the large banks, start to play a role, and we're seeing that already. Like my read on the RWA, the real-world asset tokenization craze, is really just banks tilling the soil for what is the most viral real-world asset, which is a tokenized dollar. They talk about the security stuff, and that's fun too, but I think everyone's going to say, hey, we found it conveniently that the best thing to do a real-world asset token around is the US dollar. And so I think once we start seeing that, you're going to see all these payment networks pop up. There's going to be incentives. There's going to be a war for, mind share and adoption and utilization. And that's exciting for everyone in this room, hopefully, certainly for Bitwave and Coinbase and even ourselves, because it really will then be about competing on the products as opposed to talking about adoption. So I think that's where we're headed.
Love that. Cindy, from your perspective?
Yeah, so definitely we need, number one is regulatory clarity. I think that's been top of mind for our company to push for in the industry. But, what we need to continue to sort of push this forward is, partners like Google and EY, who will continue to drive innovation and with the infrastructure and help us collectively. Partners like Bitwave and back office financial systems, like a lot of folks here, to really embrace and push crypto as well. And what else?
I would say definitely.
Our own products too. We need to enhance those, right?
Yeah, just definitely, working with your finance team. Why not?
Yeah.
And as far as pushing your ERP to be able to accept crypto as well.
And I think there's a lot of innovations on the horizon that'll make this even better. The cool thing though is we were talking about real things that are happening today with the tech that exists, right? And the innovation that Coinbase is pushing for, especially around the base layer 2. Pat mentioned lots of L2s earlier, but that's bringing the 10x cost savings, the speed, down even further. So we're really excited to see how that develops.
Speaking of base 2, I mean, I think Q2, it's the average median gas fee has been less than a cent for us. So it's and less than a second to transfer. So they are building smart wallets. They're building things to embrace the ecosystem as well.
We're talking seconds and cents, then we're doing something right. Yeah, that's great. And I know we have a few minutes left. Roselle, just go to you. For anybody in the audience, because there are some folks that I know that are thinking about payments for their own process, what advice would you give them if they were just starting on this journey?
Well, at Coinbase, we know there was a lot of vendors that are they're still, dipping their toe in the water. So we did accept, we allowed them to be paid both in fiat and crypto, and so that way they feel comfortable. So, just try out a few payments until you get comfortable, and then you'll see just the power of how easy it is.
Great. All right, Cindy, go ahead.
No, I'd say just don't be afraid to get started sooner than later. We've had back-end procurement systems push back and said this isn't a priority for years and years, and then others that really just say we're going to be in it right now, and I think they're the ones that are going to be forward, thinkers, and now they get other clients that they get to be paid through crypto because a lot of people are asking. So start early and don't be afraid of the change.
So in that AFP survey I looked at for these stats, at the bottom in italics, it said stable coins, other new blockchain technologies not represented yet. I'm hoping that next year, 2 years from now, we're going to start to see that percentage go up, and really thanks to the efforts from you all. So the last thing I'll say too is if you are, if you work with Google or you're interested in learning more about what they're doing in this space, come talk to Rich, or if you want to make a payment in crypto, I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah, that's actually, you know what, I'm going to use this
Go ahead.
a couple seconds. If you do want to pay in crypto, I think it's absolutely important that you communicate that to your partners. Because what is really kind of shocking is even in the crypto space, I found myself and our team going out and saying hey, crypto company A, do you want to pay in crypto? And that always felt a little bizarre because it felt like we had to lead them to water when they should be banging at the door saying, hey, I want to do this, right? I want to utilize this new payment method. And so if you're in that boat, definitely making those that desire known and vocalize it is the best way to then start finding partners that you otherwise wouldn't have known existed, right? Because people start to come out of the woodwork and say, oh, well, we can help you with that. So I think that's the one thing that I just wanted to kind of drop a line on. And then the other thing is I think Roselle, you said it, like you need a champion. So like in your organization, I mean, I was basically that crazy guy when we got Google to move into crypto, right, 3 or 4 years ago. And the first thing I said is, if we do not do payments, if we do not figure out how to hold this stuff and transact in it, I don't care what products and services we build, it will be considered a failure. And that was a crazy thing to say. But now when you look at it, and sort of the world's kind of come to crypto in a way that it hadn't back then, it's very clear to me now that like without someone just kind of saying like, this is a non-starter, this is a necessary condition for success for our whatever digital asset efforts. So if you're in the room and you're saying like, well, we have a crypto team, but no one's willing to pound the table about crypto payments, then you will be last. And so ultimately, I think that that's really important. And Coinbase has done a very good job of finding those champions in the organizations and sort of giving them the materials and the ammunition. I'll shout out your institutional team for doing that as well.
Thank you, Ryan.
And so, you know, ask for help and take that on. I think that's the key.
Yeah, it is really a partnership cross-functionally across. We need champions across the company. Like we definitely would not be able to have fully sold like and convince all these vendors without sort of partners like Ryan and team to support that.
Yeah, it really helps when you have executive support. to your
And
point.
yes, and when it's coming down from your executives, I mean, that's our goal.
Well, thank you. This was excellent discussion. What I love about this is I love talking about the future and the theory and where we're headed. I think there's topics we get into in privacy and ZK that Pat was talking about, but today was really focused on what you guys have already done, and is excited to see how it builds. So thank you for what you're doing to really drive the industry forward.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right.